The miraculous journey of Judah's lost tribe, discovered in God's divine plan for redemption. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the hand of the Lord was upon the land, and Israel found itself caught in the weave of divine providence. Within a sacred tent, beneath a canopy woven with memories of promise and struggle, Jacob, known as Israel, summoned his 12 sons. The air was thick with emotion, the flicker of oil lamps casting dancing shadows upon their faces, each reflecting the legacy of a shared lineage. Among them stood Judah, his firstborn, a young man destined for greatness, though unaware of the weight of the legacy that awaited. With authority and tenderness, Jacob's voice resonated. "Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies." Genesis 49:8, ESV. These words were not mere blessings, but prophetic declarations, crafting a tapestry of hope and destiny, outlining a future stretching beyond the confines of their tent. He spoke of a ruler coming from Judah, one whose reign would bring peace and restoration, an echo of God's promise woven into the fabric of Israel's existence. Yet, as time marched forward, the kingdom flourished under King David's reign. The promise flickered but remained steadfast. Sin crept in, rebellion against Yahweh festered, and the very fabric of unity began to fray. Judah, once a beacon of hope, found itself amid turmoil as the nation waged internal battles, grappling with the haunting sense of impending despair. Fast forward to the exile of 586 BCE, where remnants of Judah clung to faith amidst ashes. Gathered in the remains of their once great city, their hearts cried out, lamenting days of glory. The ruins whispered stories of sorrow, as flickering lanterns cast reflections on wearied faces, shadows of resilience born from unyielding faith. Jeremiah's voice echoed through the darkness, proclaiming hope. "For I know the plans I have for you." Jeremiah 29:11, ESV. His words ignited flickers of courage within despondent hearts, for it was a promise of restoration. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. In the shadows of despair, the narrative of Esther unfolded. A young woman of Judah, rising from obscurity to be a beacon of courage and hope. Her bravery resonated with Jeremiah's hope, igniting a passion for justice and faith among her people. Who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther 4:14, ESV. As she courageously stepped forward, hearts began to kindle with the understanding that amid darkness, God was at work, intricately weaving his sovereign plan. Yet, lingering questions haunted the faithful of Judah. Could they reclaim their identity? Would Jacob's blessings and prophet's promises unfold in their lifetimes? What divine purpose lingered in their struggles? The journey deepened into the mystery of God's redemptive plan, leaving them yearning for restoration and hope amidst the ruins, aware that a new dawn awaited. As the flicker of hope reminded them of the shoot that shall arise from the stump of Jesse, Isaiah 11:1, ESV, the path ahead beckoned forth, awaiting divine resolution. As the days of mourning lengthened, the heart of Judah pulsed with the ache of expectation. In the hallowed silence of despair, the faithful gathered, recounting the latest whispers of hope. An elder, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, rose among them and proclaimed, "Though we walk through the valley of shadows, fear not, for the Lord has not forgotten us." Psalm 23:4, ESV. His voice carried the weight of promise, ringing true amid the grief. Meanwhile, in the citadel of Shushan, the wheels of heaven turned silently yet purposefully. The young Queen Esther lay restless upon her silken sheets, burdened by her heritage and the plight of her people. The cry of Judah echoed in her heart, as she remembered the ancient prophecies of deliverance woven through her lineage. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. Esther 4:14 ESV. Her uncle Mordecai had warned her. The truth settled upon her like a mantle, urging her toward courage. Esther, trembling yet resolute, approached her husband, King Ahasuerus, uninvited. The chamber fell silent, and her heart raced as she grasped the edge of his throne. "If I have found favor in your sight, O king," she began, her voice trembling yet bold, "let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request." With a glance from the king, the gravity of her plea hung in the air, shaping the fate of many. Back in Judah, the exiles sought refuge in prayer, their hearts entangled with the tales of their forefathers. One among them, a wise and aged scribe named Ezra, opened the sacred scrolls, reading of the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. His voice trembled with awe, "And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your offspring after you." Genesis 17:7 ESV. The words compelled the remnant to remember their covenantal identity, igniting within them a spark of hope, a rekindled faith in God's mercy and promise. As time unfolded, Esther's courage bore fruit. A decree of salvation blazed forth from the palace, and the enemies of the Jews trembled in response. The favor of the king swayed like the tides, parting the sea of despair that had settled over Judah. The royal edict echoed through the streets. The Jews are permitted to gather and defend their lives. Esther 8:11 ESV. Shouts of joy erupted, sounding like bells of deliverance ringing across the land, a prelude to a new beginning. In this unfolding of providence, the angelic hosts watched with bated breath, aware of the significance of each moment, as the Lord's intention streamed toward fruition. The tendrils of God's sovereign hand were visible, weaving through the lives of Esther and her exiled kin, as he brought forth the remnants of Judah from the brink of annihilation to the dawn of hope. Yet, beneath the surface of triumph, a divine mystery lingered. For how could such deliverance remain unfulfilled while Judah still lay scattered, their identity intertwined with the ruins of Jerusalem? And what of the ruler coming from Judah? Would he finally arise from the ashes of despair to reclaim his people? The hearts of the faithful ached with longing, for unseen paths lay ahead. In this crucible of circumstance and providence, the stage awaited the ultimate act of redemption. What was God preparing to reveal next in his sovereign, unfolding plan? In the days that followed the decree, joyous gatherings filled the streets of Shushan, where the murmurs of hope transformed into songs of celebration. Esther, garbed in royal splendor, stepped forth into the light of her people's gratitude, yet within her spirit stirred a solemn weight. She grasped the significance of her actions, understanding that the favor she had invoked was but a step toward a greater deliverance, the salvation of her lineage. Meanwhile, across the provinces, the children of Judah began to awaken from their slumber of despair. Bold hearts arose, emboldened by the words of the queen and the divine whisper prompting the dawn of renewal. They gathered under the ancient oaks, seeking counsel and prayerful unity. "For I know the plans I have for you," they spoke in resonant voices, recalling the words of the prophet Jeremiah, "plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Jeremiah 29:11 ESV. Yet, shadows lingered. Haman, the accursed adversary whose schemes had been thwarted, still roamed the citadel like a lion waiting to pounce. His heart simmered with vengeance. He plotted, concocting dark machinations against Esther and her people, unaware that the hand of the Almighty was positioned to dismantle his treachery. For the Lord, in his infinite wisdom, oversees the perplexities of mankind, his purposes unfurling like the petals of a blossoming flower, radiant and irresistible. As Esther felt the tides of change shift, she sought the counsel of Mordecai, whose faith remained a bastion of strength. "Mordecai," she implored, "what wisdom have you uncovered? The enemy still seeks the ruin of our kin." With the weight of history upon him, Mordecai replied gravely, "Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place." Esther 4:13-14 ESV. His words rippled through her, a reminder that with great privilege comes great responsibility, as the divinely orchestrated plan of rescue hung in the balance. And so the day approached when the Jews would gather to defend their lives. Across Babylon, prayers were offered up like fragrant incense, declarations of faith resonating in the heavens. As they united, a spirit of anticipation surged through them. They envisioned a pathway illuminated by the promise of their forefathers, a rallying cry echoing the depths of their covenant with the Most High. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. Psalm 25:1, ESV. Esther's heart, aflame with purpose, turned toward prayer. She called for a fast, beseeching both her people and the Spirit of the Lord for wisdom and courage. Gather all the Jews to be found in Shushan and hold a fast on my behalf, she urged, her voice resolute, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Esther 4:16, ESV. In the twilight hush of longing, the wheels of heaven turned ever so purposefully, unveiling an intricate tapestry of divine providence. What unforeseen deliverance awaited? The hearts of the faithful thrummed with urgency as they contemplated the humble beginnings of a mighty ruler, one who would not only reclaim a people, but also alter the course of history forever. Yet the mystery remained. Would this deliverance be realized through Esther, or would the shadows yet hide the true fulfillment of God's promise? For the Lord operates in ways beyond understanding, weaving his will through the hearts and prayers of his faithful, ever guiding them toward a glorious climax of redemption. As the sun rose over Shushan, its rays pierced through the veil of night, illuminating the hearts of the assembled Jews. Their solemn faces shone not only from the light of day, but from the fervor of prayer intermingled with supplication. Esther called her maidens close, their spirits bound together in this sacred mission. In this hour of need, she breathed, we stand united, our hearts entwined in supplication before the God of our fathers, for he alone can grant us courage. The air was thick with expectation, the kind that quieted the fervent whispers of uncertainty. Among the gathered, some recalled the memory of times when God delivered their ancestors from destruction, how the sea parted before Moses, how manna fell from heaven, and how their God proved faithful even in exile. Remember, friends, one elder murmured, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. Lamentations 3:22-23, ESV. As Esther stepped forth, she felt the weight of the moment's gravity. Clad in royal robes, she approached the parlor of the king. Fear gripped her heart. Would he extend his golden scepter, a sign of grace, or allow the specter of her peril to descend? Lord, grant me wisdom and strength, she prayed silently, channeling the courage to bear her burden. The king's court fluttered with life and music from distant lyres, yet among the merriment, an undercurrent of tension lingered, as every heart knew of Haman's shadow lurking within their walls. Unbeknownst to the king, Haman plotted once more, seething with rage and vengeance he sought to unleash upon the Jews. His treachery was like a storm cloud poised to burst forth, and yet he believed himself untouchable. It so happened that as Esther entered the king's presence, he looked upon her with eyes of surprise. What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, even to the half of my kingdom. Esther 5:3, ESV. There lay an opening, an opportunity woven within the fabric of divine destiny. With a heart pounding like the drums of war, Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. Come, let us feast, and during the meal, I shall reveal my petition, she declared, her voice steady, despite the tempest within. Little did they know, the table set for hospitality was the stage for a revelation that could alter their fates eternally. As laughter filled the air amid their dining, Lady Esther could feel the divine pulse throbbing through her veins. It granted her an inclination toward the tumultuous truth. In your presence, O king, I seek to unfold a troubling matter concerning my people, she began, her heart echoing with the ancient covenant that they were set apart to bring forth God's purposes on the earth. That very night, as the banquet was laid to rest and the echoes of laughter faded, an unwavering serenity settled upon her spirit. She rested upon the foundation of faith that had been built through generations, the promises of deliverance, the unyielding love of God, and the covenant grace bestowed upon his chosen. Yet amidst the shimmering candor of celebration, a shadow loomed larger still. For Haman, in his despicable machinations, conspired beneath the very roof that celebrated Esther's bravery. He did not know that the day would soon dawn, when the treachery and the blessedness would collide in an unforeseen revelation. But what he could not fathom was the divine orchestration at work, whereby the deed of a humble queen would unveil the true might of God. The scales of justice trembled on the brink of balance, and the hearts of those faithful to the God of their forefathers awaited the unfolding of his sovereign plan. Would Esther's pleas shatter the chains of darkness, or would Haman's hold tighten further? The time of revelation is ever near, and the stage was but set for God's promise to manifest in ways unfathomable, turning the tides of despair into a proclamation of mighty deliverance. As dawn broke on the morrow, the city of Shushan stirred with the echoes of a restless night. Its denizens sensed an undercurrent of anticipation, a whisper that fanned the flames of expectation in their hearts. In the royal palace, Queen Esther arose, her spirit still cloaked in solemn resolve. She understood that the hour had come, a moment ordained by divine providence awaited her. The memory of Haman's wickedness danced like a specter in her mind. Conceived in malice, his decree sought to extinguish the lives of her people. Yet, God had positioned her as a vessel of hope. She adorned herself once more, this time adjusting her crown with a sense of purpose as she prepared to face the king with unwavering faith. Entering the grand hall adorned with splendor, Esther found her heart steady despite the gravity of her task. King Ahasuerus reclined upon his throne, eyes glimmering with curiosity and concern. "What troubles you, Queen Esther? You have my attention," he inquired, his voice resonating throughout the chamber, commanding silence among the assembled nobles. At that moment, Haman stood nearby, unaware of the tempest brewing within the soul of the queen. Esther's voice rose above the murmur of silence. "If it pleases the king, grant me but a moment to speak concerning a matter most grave." Her heart raced as the king leaned closer, and she could feel the weight of her people's plight press heavily upon her shoulders. "Your Majesty," she began, her tone imbued with conviction, "there exists a plot, devising death for my people, the Jews. For Haman, the very one who stands at your right hand, has schemed against us." The words fell from her lips like a sword drawn with intent. Gasps filled the hall as the gravity of her declaration rippled through the assembly. Haman's countenance turned pale, fear wrapping its icy fingers around his heart. The king, stunned into silence, looked from Esther to Haman, his brow furrowing with confusion and rage. "Is this true, Haman? Have you dared to conspire against the queen and her people?" The king's voice boomed, reverberating with the authority of justice. "The queen is mistaken," Haman stammered, desperation clawing at his throat. "It is not against her that I have plotted, but against the unworthy Jews who refuse to bow." In his frantic pleas, the man exposed his own guilt and malice before the throne. But Esther remained unmoved. "Your Majesty, I stand before you as one of them, a Jew by birth. In their blood flows the covenant, in their hearts burns the faith of our ancestors." The truth of her identity hung in the air, heavy with the wisdom of God's design unfurling like the leaves of spring. A flicker of divine anger ignited within King Ahasuerus. Rising from his golden throne, he stormed from the chamber, his heart racked with turmoil, leaving in his wake a cloud of uncertainty. Esther's heart, though strained, held fast to the promises of God. She understood that a divine auction of justice was being painted upon the canvas of time. Then Haman, realizing his impending doom, fell at Esther's feet, pleading for mercy as the king returned at that fateful moment. The sight of the impetuous villain before Esther struck the king's heart like thunder. "What shall be done to the one who has put the queen in such peril?" he demanded, eyes ablaze. In a whirlwind of swift justice, the king signaled to guards, and the decree was reversed. The very gallows Haman had built for the Jews would soon become his own demise. Thus the hand of God moved mightily, orchestrating each thread of this tapestry with purpose. The veil of darkness began to lift, revealing a brighter dawn for Esther, her people, and the faithful who believed in the power of their God. But in the unfolding drama, the echo of a deeper plan remained. Little did they know, God was preparing a great deliverance, one that would echo through generations. For this moment was but a chapter in a larger narrative of redemption and hope, for the Lord always works all things for the good of those who love him. As the curtains of destiny were drawn back, the stage was set for a revelation yet to come. A promise whispered through the ages awaited its proclamation. What further wonders lie in the heart of God's unfolding mystery? And how would the struggles of a queen and her people lead to the fullness of redemption? The story was far from over. As the sun ascended in the sky, casting rays of gold upon the city of Shushan, a profound stillness permeated the air. The people felt the weight of the recent events, each heart glued to the unfolding story that intertwined their lives with the sovereign will of God. The queen's boldness had stirred their spirits. Now, they held their breath for what was to be revealed in the days to come. In the palace, as the king's commands echoed through the halls, Haman was swiftly taken away, bound by his own treachery. The echoes of justice reverberated in the hearts of the Jews, a renewed hope fostering where despair had once reigned. Esther, trembling yet grateful, called upon the Lord's name in silent prayer, her spirit anchored in faith. Lord, she surmised in her heart, you have seen my plight. Surely there is a greater purpose in this moment than I can perceive. A sense of divine resolve enveloped her, urging her forth to speak again to the king. She understood that while justice had been served, the covenant of her people required restoration. When Ahasuerus returned, his expression revealed both the tumult of his emotions and the thundering presence of a king compelled to act justly. Drawing near to Esther, he inquired with a softer tone, "What more can be done for you, Queen Esther? The evil Haman has been erased from power. What remains to be resolved?" Emboldened by the Lord, Esther raised her voice. "Your Majesty, let a decree be made to save my people, for Haman's plot is still written upon the scrolls. My brethren stand at the brink of destruction. Grant them the power to defend themselves against their adversaries." Ahasuerus regarded the queen with deepening compassion, recognizing her heart's anguish. He commanded the scribes to bring forth new scrolls and ink, that a royal edict might be inscribed. The king's seal would mark it, and thus it would stand immutable against the schemes of the wicked. With diligence, the scribes recorded the decree, proclaiming that on a set day, the Jews were permitted to gather and defend themselves against anyone who should attempt to harm them. "May they rally together in strength and in faith," the king declared. "Their lives restored. Let them know they are treasured and protected in this realm." Across the land, news spread like wildfire. The Jewish people rejoiced, their hearts stirring with courage, for God had intervened on their behalf. They turned their faces toward the heavens, praying in unison, "Blessed be the Lord our God, who has delivered us from the hands of our enemies." Esther, filled with a renewed spirit, saw in this moment the unfolding of God's divine plot, a plan woven through the ages. While the victory was sweet, she sensed within her heart a whisper of something far greater, hidden beneath the surface. "What shall this deliverance truly mean for my people?" she pondered. The skies began to darken, thunder rumbling in the distance. A shadow loomed on the horizon, and an ominous feeling swept over the city. Yet amidst the trepidation, the Lord's promise of protection lingered in their hearts like a beacon of hope. For in his sovereign plan, the trials faced by Esther and her people were part of a greater redemption narrative, one that would one day echo through the chambers of eternity. The very bloodline to which Esther belonged would play a pivotal role in the dawning of a new covenant. As the king's decree circulated through the land, a stirring realization dawned upon the faithful. Lambs were destined for sacrifice, victories to be claimed, and struggles would yield salvation. They felt as though the very veil between heaven and earth was thinning, whispering promises yet to be fulfilled. Little did they know, the path before them was fraught with peril, but God's promises would prove unfailing. For where there is darkness, light shall triumph. How would God's majestic plan unfold, drawing his people closer to the promise of redemption? The whispering winds carried a truth yet to be unveiled, propelling them ever forward in faith. As dawn broke over the city of Shushan, the people awoke with a renewed spirit. The vibrant colors of hope blossomed in their hearts, assured by the decree that granted them the power to defend their lives. Yet, even amidst their rejoicing, a heaviness remained, a gnawing awareness that their deliverance was not yet complete. Esther walked through the palace garden where fragrant flowers bloomed, their beauty overshadowed by the weighty decisions that lingered. Alone with her thoughts, she often found herself gazing towards the heavens. "Lord," she whispered, "will you protect my people? Will their courage be enough for what lies ahead?" As she prayed, her heart was drawn to the plight of those who still bore the scars of Haman's hatred. She sought solace in the promises of the Lord, recalling his faithfulness throughout generations. The Spirit stirred within her, reminding her of the God who parted the Red Sea, who inspired David to defeat Goliath, and who had always walked alongside his chosen ones. "Your plans are perfect, O God," she lamented. "Yet how can I further lead my people to safety?" Meanwhile, throughout the provinces, a simmering tension gripped the hearts of the Jewish people. Danger loomed, and the countdown to their day of reckoning drew near. As the day awaited its dawn, the adversaries of the Jews plotted in shadows, emboldened by Haman's past influence. Word of the king's decree also reached their ears. Fear and wrath intertwined in their hearts, but they resolved to stand against the will of the Almighty. On the eve of the appointed day, the Jewish people gathered in prayer. With their faces humble before the Lord, they petitioned, "Father, we cry out for deliverance. You have claimed us as your own. Let not the enemy speak defeat over us." Esther, sensing the urgency of their plea, called for a gathering of her household. "Prepare a feast," she commanded. "Let our people come together in unity of spirit, for even as shadows lie heavy, we shall celebrate the providence of our God." And so, a banquet was prepared, filled with the aroma of spices and the sweet sounds of thanksgiving. In the company of her people, Esther broke bread as the sun began to set, their hearts entwined in a tapestry of faith. The sound of their laughter became a defiant roar against the oncoming darkness. They toasted, "To the God who saves, to whom we trust, our refuge and fortress." In a moment of clarity, Esther raised her cup. "Let us remember the faith of our forefathers, who looked upon the Lord in their trials. He shall not abandon us." And they echoed her words, their voices rising to the heavens. "He shall not abandon us." As the night deepened, Esther was reminded of her purpose, not merely to protect her people, but to declare to the world the greatness of the God she served. She deemed it necessary that the king himself understand the gravity of the threat against his queen's people, especially in the light of newfound mercies that would surely come. The impending day weighed heavily upon her. If the enemy rose up as planned, would her people, armed only with faith and the king's decree, find victory against the forces of evil? With morning light creeping over the horizon, the appointed day arrived, a day of reckoning and a divine chess match of cosmic significance. As fear and valor clashed, Esther knew she was born for such a time as this. Yet in her heart, questions still lingered. What more must I do? How shall this end? The Lord's answer was close at hand, hidden in the folds of his great plan, and Esther's heart thrummed with expectation. For within the chaos lay a redemptive purpose, a promise not just for today, but echoing through the ages. Something magnificent was yet to be unveiled, leading them all towards a covenant of profound significance. The stage was set. The players were gathered. Would God's faithfulness shine through in the midst of fear? The next chapter awaited, imbued with the promise, the silent whisper echoing deeper still. A greater deliverance is at hand. As the sun emerged over the horizon, the day of reckoning began to unfold, its light piercing through the shadows of despair. In the citadel of Shushan, a sense of charged anticipation hung in the air, thick with anxiety, and faith mingling like the morning dew upon the grass. Esther, draped in her royal robes, approached the king's chamber, the weight of her people's future pressing heavily upon her heart. With each step echoing through the hallowed halls, she offered a silent prayer. "O Lord, grant me courage, for my heart is torn between love for my people and the fear of what this day may bring." As she approached King Ahasuerus, her eyes reflected the strength of her people, unyielding and fierce. The king, seated upon his throne, took notice of her presence. His expression shifted as he saw the lingering dread in her eyes. "What is it, Queen Esther? All but half the kingdom is yours. Speak, and it shall be given to you." The words were inviting, yet Esther hesitated, the gravity of her intentions weighing heavily upon her spirit. Yet she remembered her people's cries and the fierce prayer they had offered. With a tremor in her voice, she declared, "If it pleases the king, let a banquet be prepared, one for us and one for Haman, the adversary who has sought the destruction of my people." A perplexed look clouded Ahasuerus's brow, but nonetheless he commanded it be done. The banquet halls were adorned with garlands, the tables laid with the finest dishes, and the aroma of roasted lamb filled the air, seducing the senses, cloaking the tension that accompanied Haman's presence. When Haman arrived, he was greeted with feigned admiration, his heart swelling with pride. At the table, as goblets clinked in celebration, Esther observed Haman's demeanor, the very embodiment of evil cloaked in laughter. Inwardly, she wrestled with the knowledge of Haman's true intentions, a play that would seal the fate of her people. After they feasted, Ahasuerus, filled with curiosity, leaned toward Esther. "What is your true request, Queen? Speak plainly, and I shall grant you whatever you ask." With a deep breath that could hardly steady her trembling heart, Esther revealed her truth. "If I have found favor in your sight, my lord, let my life be spared, and the lives of my people, for we have been sold to destruction." At her words, a dense silence fell over the table, the laughter extinguished as darkness crept into the light of the gathering. Haman's face blanched, panic igniting in his chest as he grasped the implications of her request. Who is he, and where is he, that dares to presume upon the king's decree? Esther's finger pointed toward Haman, her voice steady, yet filled with righteous indignation. "The adversary stands before you, seeking my people's annihilation." Ahasuerus, in disbelief, turned his gaze upon Haman. "What audacity is this?" His voice thundered through the halls, commanding all attention. Caught in the web of his own malice, Haman fell to his knees, pleading for mercy. "My king, I did not mean harm." The king's wrath surged, igniting the fire of justice. The decree against the Jews, once signed with a seal, became a weapon now turned against Haman himself as the tides shifted. As the courtyard erupted into unrest, Esther shifted her gaze upward, grateful. The unseen hand of providence orchestrated her every move, leading her steps. She realized in that moment the manifest truth of God's promise danced before her eyes. Thus, she contemplated, what may appear as the end might become the beginning of something greater. The king commanded Haman to be hanged upon the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai, the righteous uncle who had stood firm in faith amidst uncertainty. Following the pronouncement, order began to restore itself. Yet Esther understood. Her fight was not yet complete. The profound deliverance of her people would unfold as the sun set once more. After Haman's fall, the echoes of fear would still linger, but light began to break through. Yet as the victory loomed close, Esther felt within her spirit the stirring of a deeper purpose, for greater still awaited. With her people's salvation on the horizon, she pondered the unfathomable depth of God's boundless grace, knowing fully now that her destiny, and theirs, marched toward a deeper unfolding in His divine plan. And the promise lingered in the air, undeniable and fierce. A greater deliverance is at hand. As the tumult within the royal courts of Shushan began to settle, a hush enveloped the land, intertwined with the whispers of a people held in hopeful anticipation. Each heart thudded like a drum, resonating with the promise of deliverance that hung palpably in the air. Esther, having spoken truth to power, felt the weight of divine purpose shift her very being. A greater deliverance is indeed at hand, she mused softly, her spirit alight with an unquenchable fire. Her mission was clear, yet it was laced with shadows yet to be dispelled. With the decree against Haman executed, King Ahasuerus turned to Queen Esther once more, his expression now tempered by the weight of grief and the stirring of fervent admiration. "What more shall be done for you, my queen?" he inquired with sincerity, sensing the weight of a destiny that surpassed mere earthly concerns. Esther, in a moment of boldness fortified by the Lord, resolved to lay bare the depths of her anguish. "My king, there is yet a decree that threatens my people. It is still in effect, and it brings anguish to the hearts of the Jews throughout your vast domain. The enemy's plan seeks to extinguish the hope of Israel." The king's brow furrowed in deep thought as he searched for resolution. The words weighed heavy in the chamber, suspended by an unseen hand guiding the purpose of their gathering. "What can be done?" he pressed, sensing an urgency beyond mere royal duty. "Let letters be written in my name," Esther proposed, ignited by the Spirit. "Inscribe a new decree that grants us permission to defend ourselves against those who would rise to destroy us. Let it be a moment of vengeance turned to victory for our people, a time for justice." The king nodded solemnly, recognizing the gravity of her request. He summoned the scribes, and with haste, they produced a new decree, emblazoned with the royal seal. Freedom now whispered into the hearts of the Jews, a glimmer of hope cutting through the remnants of fear. "It is done," Ahasuerus declared, the proclamation echoing through the halls. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the kingdom in golden hues, a sense of wondrous anticipation filled Esther's heart. This moment transcended human understanding, for the stroke of a pen had the power to reverse a tide of doom. She stood, not as a mere queen but as an instrument of God's providence, chosen to bring forth the dawn. Meanwhile, in the lands beyond Shushan, the people of Israel stirred in their homes. The news of the new decree sent ripples of joy and relief mingling through the streets. They remembered the words of the prophets and the covenant promises, now intertwined within their very souls as they grasped the reality of their impending deliverance. Yet as they celebrated, Esther's heart remained restless, for she knew that true victory came at a price of faithfulness and prayer. She called upon her people to unite in solemn prayer, seeking the face of the Almighty, who guides and protects. "Gather the Jewish people and fast on my behalf," she instructed upon sending her messenger. "For we need divine strength and courage as we face those who would seek our harm. The battle is not ours, it is the Lord's." Esther's declaration echoed firm and fearless against the backdrop of uncertainty. A profound stillness settled upon the people as they took heed, seeking the Lord with their whole hearts. They understood, as Esther did, that sometimes darkness must be confronted for the light of salvation to shine forth. And so, as the night fell softly over Shushan, illuminated by a myriad of stars, the faithful began their vigil, a sacred proclamation of unity before the King of Kings, entwined in the tapestry of his sovereign plan. With bows drawn, swords ready, and faith enlivened, they looked toward their deliverance. For within the depths of that holy assembly, the promise echoed. What they did not yet know was that God's hand was drawing closer, preparing for the day of reckoning that would reveal his unyielding faithfulness. As the day of reckoning unfolded, the city of Shushan brimmed with fervor and anticipation. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the hearts of the Jewish people, who awaited their ordained moment of deliverance. Esther, resolute in purpose, stood at the forefront of hope, her spirit alight with faith that transcended fear. "Today," she proclaimed, gathering her people around her, "is a day of victory, for the Lord our God has promised us restoration." Her voice rang like a clarion call, invigorating those who had gathered, hearts enthralled with the promise of an unfolding tale, a hero from the house of Judah destined to emerge amidst tribulation. In the streets, echoes of prayer and praise surged like waves upon the shore, an invitation to the Almighty's hand. "Blessed be the Lord who fights for his people," they declared, lifted by the winds of faith and strengthened by Esther's unwavering conviction. As dusk descended, the appointed hour approached when their destiny would intertwine with divine providence, weaving the tapestry of redemption. The gates of Shushan opened, revealing the throngs of Jews prepared to defend their lives against any who sought to extinguish the light of their promise. Armed not solely with swords but with faith forged in the fires of deliverance, they stood ready. Yet, over in Haman's quarters, darkness loomed, his heart hardened against those he had sought to destroy. Blind to the magnitude of his demise, he reveled momentarily in his fleeting successes, certain he could outmaneuver divine intervention. However, unbeknownst to him, the hand of God was upon every step of this grand narrative, unseen yet sovereignly orchestrating the final notes of this symphony of redemption. On the battlefield, Esther led her kinsmen with courage born of prayer, declaring, "Let us rise and shine the light of our God, for he fights for us, even against the odds." Her words ignited a collective fire in the hearts of the Jewish people, emboldening them to charge forth in unity against the shadows that threatened their lives and legacy. And thus began the confrontation that would echo through generations, a clash of darkness and light that embodied the battle of faith itself. In fervent prayer, they lifted their voices to the heavens, calling upon the Lord, "O God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, deliver us." As the war cries resounded, the tables turned, and what once might have appeared as despair morphed into the dawn of new beginnings. The Jews rallied under Esther's banner, their cries for justice infused with the powerful realization that they were not alone. The Lord Almighty was with them. Across the battlefield, Haman faced the consequences of his malice, a sight that unfolded with divine clarity. One by one, the enemies of Judah fell before the righteous, unable to withstand the hand of God guiding their every move. The day shifted as dawn turned to midday, an undeniable testimony to the sovereignty and faithfulness of the one who had promised redemption. Emerging victorious, Esther and her people gazed upon the ruins of darkness that had sought to swallow them whole. Each victory against their adversaries echoed the ancient promises of deliverance, rekindling their hope and identity as God's chosen people. In the aftermath of the clamor, as quiet settled upon the victorious camp, they found themselves surrounded by remnants of faith, a balm for the souls that had weathered great storms. In that sacred moment of reflection, Esther raised her voice in resounding joy. "Let us remember the faithfulness of the Lord our God endures forever, for he has turned our mourning into dancing." Under the golden light of the setting sun, their hearts united in gratitude. Esther felt the weight of history cradle her as they offered thanks to God. "You have been our refuge," she proclaimed, "and today we stand together, restored and redeemed." As the faithful reveled in newfound unity and identity, the narrative sealed around them, the promise of a ruler from Judah, a lasting legacy continuing through generations. And so it was. The heart of the people beat in rhythm with God's greater plan, alive with hope and bound by covenant. In fervent prayer they asked, "What will this deliverance mean for our people?" And the answer blossomed anew before their eyes, an advent that stirred the spirit, for it heralded not only their salvation, but the soon-to-come fulfillment of the promise of a Messiah who would rise to reign. Thus concluded the remarkable journey of Judah's lost tribe, transformed, restored, and renewed. They had traversed the shadows of despair into the light of divine redemption. United in spirit, they realized that their testimony would reverberate for generations, an invitation for all to believe in the goodness of the Lord. As they gathered once more, Esther raised her cup in celebration, beckoning all to partake in the promise. "Let us rejoice, for we are his people, and he has not forsaken us." Their cries mingled with the heavens, ringing true as echoes of a promise fulfilled danced in the air. Now, dear friend, as you reflect on this powerful tale of God's unwavering faithfulness, I invite you to respond to the call of the Almighty in your own life. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that will transform your heart and renew your spirit. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, igniting hope in countless lives. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and how this incredible story of Esther and the exiles has impacted your faith journey. Share instantly this testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear about God's unfailing truth and everlasting love. This is your moment to help spread biblical truth. Join us as we carry the message of hope into the world. Don't wait even one more second. Let your actions spark a wildfire of faith.